I recently went back to the UK, and it's my hometown of Grimsby, which was nice to see my family, and it really was nice, but obviously the weather itself, I was ill, my arthritis played up and I got gout and I had a terrible time. But what shocked me was how run down the place was. The main shopping area which I used to go regularly, called Victoria Street, looked like downtown Beirut. So many shops had closed down, and it wasn't vibrant at all. And the amount of druggies and rough sleepers there was it was disheartening. It was not my home anymore. And I must admit, I've lived in Bulgaria this past 12 years, I must admit, I'm happy here, but the town of my birth is not my home anymore. I'm looking at some very disturbing news from the UK. I mean, you got this thing about Labour and Tory parties and things like that in Parliament. Both are about as much use to the people as a square wheel. In fact, the best thing that they could do is get out of the way and let people settle their own affairs. This Muslim and immigrant question is going to be a disaster, not just for the UK, but for Europe as a whole. There's going to be some sort, I mean, I can only see violence, and big time violence occurring. And they're trying to stop this hate speech. They've got no idea what really is hate speech. Hate speech is when you have a mob tearing down on you. As I've seen in London and other places, these mobs chanting for the death of Israel and the Jews and things like that. That reminds me of Kristallnacht in the old history books of Germany. You can't escape the fact that hatred is endemic, and you're going to get this problem. I'm going to say this. There is no place for Islam in Western Europe. It's a recipe for disaster. I don't say people, because people is not Islam. Islam is governing people and governing people's lives and creating this evil, and it is evil which is being created. Studied history, and in the history books, the last thing I read about, which has this sort of situation would come in, was the European religious wars between Catholicism and the Protestants. Virtually the same religion, but the warfare between the difference between the religions. And if you look at it this way, it's not everybody that fought that war, but it's everybody that suffered from it. Islam has got no place in Europe because it does not want to fit in with Europe, because its ideology is such that it wants to destroy all of the religions. There is only one faith, that's Islam. Unfortunately, with Islam, there are two Islams, or three or four. And the main ones are Sunni and Shia. And they're at war to each other all the time. If Islam has destroyed every religion on the planet, and only Islam, it will destroy itself, because it's not got any possible mechanism for reform. It cannot reform. Christianity reformed itself all the time in the end to settle down. It started to become irrelevant because people realised the irrelevancy of religion. If you've got sound laws, sound morality and things like that, what do you need religion for? What do you need a boogeyman in space to look down on you and judge you? Islam has got no mechanism for reform. So it remains stuck in the 7th century, and it always will. It's got no central authority, no central body to actually look to. it recognises no earthly authority, only that of Allah. And then they go about Muhammad's only mentioned 4 times in the Quran. Who wrote this bloody book? Who wrote it? I mean, you can read it myself, and I see it's been filched from the Jewish Torah, from Zoroastrian and some Buddhism and things like that. It's just cobbled together. It's got some fancy prose. I will admit it has, and it's got some good stuff as the Old Testament and the Torah and things like that. But if you read through it, it's a nightmare. The first copy I ever saw of the Quran, I can't read Arabic, so I have to. But the first opening lines was virtually this: "You shall not suffer a non-believer to prosper." Now, what do you mean by prosper? What do you mean by prosper? Does it mean to say they shouldn't get rich, wealthy, or have a happy life? Or does it mean say they have no life whatsoever? Well, fortunately, a lot of the time, it's no life whatsoever. I'm not particularly into trans and gays and things like that. As far as I'm concerned, homosexuality is a genetic fact. Trans, to me, is just basically decadence. But a lot of people don't feel that way, so fine. I just don't like it being promoted as it is, and don't tell me it's natural, because I don't think it's natural, don't believe it's natural. No problem with gays, because I've met gays. I stupidly legitimise myself and say I've got friends at gays, but I do have friends at gays. I even had a trans in my home for dinner. He's a fine person, but he didn't sort of go around telling me I am the one that's natural, you're not. Your kids have got to follow me. But we come back to Islam. Islam is very hostile to such things. It's got no capacity to adjust, to be compatible. Because Islam itself is based upon force and indoctrination. From a child, you're supposed to go to the madrasa or things like that. You're supposed to learn it, and in some cases beaten into learning it. It's an ideology. It's not based upon compassion or whatever. You shall do this, your wife shall be subservient to this, your children. It's basically firmly back into the 7th century and beyond that, because obviously it draws from the time when the world was less moderate as it is now. I can't quote you chapter and verse, because I'm not going to quote you chapter and verse, but you look at those Palestinian Muslim marches that's going on, hundreds of thousands, even dwarf the old Vietnam War protests and things like that. That is a movement, and what's behind it is even more sinister, because it is promoting genocide, and it's promoting genocide of the Jews. It'll promote genocide of anyone else, including us. And that is the truth of Islam. It's a book of conquest that's subverting any other cultures that is not compatible with their book. And we're not compatible with their book. So I know people won't like what I say, but I'm saying that as far as I can see, and this is not what I'm advocating, as far as I can see, is the only ideology that could counter this is not liberal democracy. I think that's failing. I think that's falling flat on its arse, and I think looking at the machinations of America, the EU and the UK and the politicians and that, there's just no dynamism, there's no direction, there's no vision. There's certainly no vision for the people. And if you're into that situation, if you're a historian, you look at this, there was a situation which had a similar, I'd say similar, not the same. History doesn't repeat itself, but as Mark Twain says, it sure can rhyme. The ideology that will counter all this is National Socialism. National Socialism. And people who are called moderate, who have just normal everyday views like everybody else in the media and things like that, are called right wing. Right wing for having views and that. They're not for preaching violence, but oh, we don't like Islam, we don't want this. You're right wing. You have an opposite view. Oh, you want to kill the Jews. You get banged into jail. Right wing. Being moderate is not right wing. It just shows you how far the media and the politics in UK and the West has fallen. And it has fallen. And so, when you get the situation, and we'll go back to Oliver Cromwell if you want to say this, when men run out of words, they will inevitably turn to the sword. And it's as good today as it was in Oliver Cromwell's time. So pension of pressure, wishing you all the best. Take care for now.